So Bones and I have been RPing together since we were in high school. Basically, since we first met. Our friend group was very much into role-playing games and collaborative storytelling kind of role-playing. We were part of not a D&D group, a role-playing club at our school, which met every Wednesday after class, and we would RP. It started with us playing from, like, books and manuals, and eventually we realized, like, we really don't care about, like, the stats and the rules, and it devolved into just doing rock, paper, scissors whenever there was, like, a big action that needed to happen. And we'd all take turns DMing, or GMing, I guess, being a game master. So every once in a while, like, we would break off into, like, smaller groups in RP. We'd do the collaborative writing kind of RP, which is what Bones and I do now, which is there's like no rules. You each take a character and you write them out. We do this in a few different ways. Sometimes we will work in paragraph form where we'll get like a Google document and we will write in paragraphs like we're writing a book, and we just exchange paragraphs, like one paragraph of his character doing something, one paragraph of my character doing something, and yeah, so that's one way we do it. Another way we will RP, I guess there's two other ways we do it. They're very similar. We'll also do the paragraph version, but we'll do it on like a chat client thing. So like we used to RP on MSN, if anyone remembers that. That old thing. So yeah, we started on MSN. We then moved to Google Hangouts for a little bit, and we have since moved to a private Discord where we will RP together. And we still use paragraph format, but because it's like in a chat window, it's usually like smaller paragraphs, whereas when we are working in, say, like a Google document or on paper, they're usually like larger paragraphs, and we're kind of invited to like write more. Though we've never been like sticklers for, I guess, like length of paragraphs. I know there's like a rule among a lot of RPers where if someone writes like a really big paragraph, then you're supposed to kind of match the same length, unless it's like impossible. And it's just like, it makes sense. It's a good etiquette rule, because it's like, if you are offering all this, like, juicy action or world building, and they're just giving you, like, one-word answers, that can be really, like, discouraging, and you can feel like you're doing all the work, or they're not engaged, so I totally get it. But Bones and I, we've been RPing together so long that we don't really worry about that too much, because we usually will just put as much as needed. And don't get me wrong, sometimes we're lazy and jerks, and we will put silly one-word answers just to make the other person mad, but that's just jokes, guys. And I guess the third way we do it is we RP in like a script format, which is where he will be a character and I will be a character, and we write it out basically like if you were reading a script, so it's like name, colon, da-da-da, whatever they say. So it really focuses on like action. It's mostly just characters sitting and talking, and that lends itself really well to when you're on chat and you just want to do something really quick and really fluffy. If it's not super action heavy, it works a lot for us. Or things that are very action heavy, we tend to like to sit down and do like long paragraphs so we can really like get into it. And it really just depends on our mood, on which one we want to do. But yeah, that's what we do primarily now. We used to RP with a lot of our friends before we all left high school and kind of split off into, all the different directions that we have gone in since. But Bones and I have always RP'd together. We've tried RPing with other people before. Like, Bones has. He was like, I want, like, more RP partners. And he tried, and he was like, it's just not the same as RPing with you. And I was like, babe. And I've done the same thing. Don't tell Bones. So we really like role-playing together. I think it really ties into our comic work, because a lot of our comics started as RPs, and RPing has definitely helped us, like, build stories together. Our ideas mesh really well, I think, and I think it's just from like practice and working together so long. So Bones, since I'm going to talk about these lovely characters here, they are from a really, really old RP. It was one of our first ones. In fact, it started with our friends in it, our high school friends, and then we split off and kind of ran with our own characters, and everyone else kind of lost interest. So this is really old, and so Bones was trying to dig up like the old, I guess, transcripts of it, like wherever we stored it. So he found like an old online forum that one of our friends made, and we all had like our own threads and we'd RP together, and so he found like a whole bunch of like RPs that were really short and we don't remember them at all, and they're really weird. Like there was one about a guy who like threw up ghosts and then his witch mother came and saved him because like the ghosts were coming out of him because he had a hole in his heart because his mom had taken out his heart or something. And yes, it was lots of weird stories like that, which you can still kind of see in our RPs. Bones has a very interesting idea. He's got interesting ideas for world building. So yeah, they're still very present in our current RPs. But there were tons of RPs like that where we'd work on them for like a month, really, really hard, and then we just drop them. I know Bones used to be really frustrated with me when I would lose interest in an RP, or a lot of the times what happens with us is we'll get to like a really intense part of an RP, like it'll get really plot heavy. If an RP is very fluffy, where it's just characters getting to know each other and having a nice time and like dating or becoming friends, like we can RP that for days. Like, I am all about fluff. I love it. It's really fun. I really like RPs that lend well to really fluffy stuff. But we do still like RPs that have lots of plot, where, like, big epic things happen and, characters die and curses are put on people and, like, really intense stuff. But I find that, like, when we get to that point in an RP, especially as, like, the story reaches its, like, climax and resolution, we tend to run away. I think part of it is like it's getting really intense, it's a lot of emotions, and sometimes you just don't have like the headspace to RP that. Like personally, I have a lot of trouble RPing really nasty villain characters because I don't like doing harm to other characters. Bones is totally the opposite. He was like, I will murder everyone, mwahaha, but he's a writer, so I know where he gets it. So I find when I have villains and they're doing really nasty stuff, I tend to like need to step away, or I really need to be in the right headspace to do it. So when things get really intense in our RPs, I think it also happens when we're kind of reaching like the logical conclusion to the RP. Because like I said, as we're reaching the climax, like it's like as soon as we defeat the big bad guy, it's over. Our characters don't really get to like go on past this if it was like a novel or a story or something. Even though with an RP you can defeat the big bad guy and keep going, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be like a logical story arc. But anyways, we always run away when things get really intense. So we have a lot of RPs that got dropped because they got too intense, maybe too quick, or I was in a bad headspace. And I used to have a lot of anxiety around RPing, even with Bones. I always like, I discovered it like fairly recently, like just within the past couple years, where I'd get really anxious about like disappointing him if I wasn't good at RPing, because he was always like adding new characters and adding cool plot stuff, and he would do like the majority of the world building, and I was always really worried like, oh, my characters are boring. They're kind of Watson types, meaning they are like a normal person who's surrounded by all these crazy characters, and they're like, why is this like this? And they ask the questions that can get answered by all the world building. Or like I'd be worried I wouldn't have cool ideas, etc., etc. Lots of anxious thoughts. And so that's another reason why I would shut down RPs and leave them, because I was always worried that I was boring. Though at the time I didn't realize that's what I felt. That's anxiety for you. Just smoosh it all down. Conceal, don't feel. So once like we discovered that, our RPs have been a lot more fun, because when I'm like, I'm really anxious, Bones is like, no, it's okay. And I'm like, oh, you're right, it is okay. And then we keep RPing. Or I'm like, I need fluffy stuff. And he's like, okay. But that is a trend in a lot of our RPs. He will have lots of very like zany magical characters, and I'll usually have the regular human. So I've noticed that like when I'm doing these talks about our characters, I'm always like talking about his character and their interesting backstory, and then I'm like, oh, and then there's Trish. She's like a law student. And I'm like, oh, my characters are so boring. Even though they're not really boring. I like their backstories, and like they just have like regular human drama. So when that's next to like werewolves and stuff, it's like, oh, it's not so bad. But it is, and it's interesting, and it is fun, because I like making these human characters that get to meet the supernatural characters. So I don't know why I'm even sad about it. So I know with RPers, I know that another pet peeve that, like, a lot of RPers have is when someone will take your character and, like, make them do things. And I totally get why that's really, like, annoying, because they could make your character do something that's totally out of character, and it can, I don't know, just take your character from you, and it can feel really bad, especially if they're, like, someone you don't know very well. But I find with Bones, because we do know each other so well, and, like, I definitely trust Bones with a lot of his ideas. He's very, like, I have an idea, and I'm like, go for it. You, like, I don't care too much if my characters get super changed, and I think part of that is the way I make characters is very, like, improv-y, where I'm kind of making it up as I go. I usually go into an RP where I'm like, I kind of want to have, like, a girl who's, like, a tough warrior girl or something. And then I slowly fill out her backstory as the story goes along. And yeah. If Bones is like, I have an idea, I'm like, what is it? Maybe I can make a really cool character out of this. But Bones has taken my characters and done terrible things to them before. I remember once I had a character and, like, Bones was putting a good old curse on him or something, and I think he had to die to get rid of it, and I was like, Bones, you wouldn't permanently kill one of my characters, right? And he looked at me and was like, well, not permanently, and I was like, okay. Then he turned the character into a frickin' zombie. I was so mad. But in a good way, because it turned out really cool. But yeah. So I think it's just the trust that we have, like, in our hearts that allows us to, like, take each other's characters and, like, work with them. We'll even RP as each other's characters if needed. Like, if one of his characters needs to talk to another one of his characters, I'll step in and be that other character, and vice versa. Again, just working with each other for so long, we're used to it. I've been talking for a really long time. I should start talking about Dianne and Raddley. Oh god, this might be long, because this is the only drawing of them for today, for this challenge, I mean. So I have a lot to talk about, and I only vaguely remember a lot of this because, like I said, it is a really, really old RP, and I feel like half of this stuff I'm, like, making up connections between things, because it was definitely a very, like, weird, sketchy plot, where I don't know a lot of, like, the villain's motives. Anyways, Dianne. She is a sweetie boop. She has this dad. She has a dad who she loves. She will follow to the ends of the earth, and he's not a very nice guy, but she doesn't really realize that. Her dad gets kidnapped by this gang. It's like, oh, I should mention, this story takes place in the 1950s, and it's in a world that is very similar to our own, but math is magic. And the people who do math magic are called mathemagicians, and that is the best. Again, it's like one of our settings where, like, there's magic, but it's very, like, weird, low-key magic. Anyways, so, yes. So her dad gets kidnapped by a bunch of crazy gangsters. She's like, I gotta go save him. And they are like, we will only give him back if you find us a math magician to do whatever crime stuff we need done. She's like, got it. So she goes, and she finds Raddley, who is a math magician, and she kidnaps him. And Raddley, he is a sweet boy. He can do magic. He's very good at it. He has a wife, he has a good job, and he has selective mutism, which means he has a lot of trouble talking to people. It's due to anxiety. He basically is unable to speak just because of how his anxiety works. The only person he talks to is his wife, and usually it's just a whisper, and everywhere else he uses sign language to communicate, and he gets through life pretty good. Anyways, so Dianne has no idea what he's saying, because she doesn't understand sign language. But eventually he, like, shows her his wedding ring, and she's like, oh my god, you have a wife, I can't do this. So he convinces her to let him go, and she follows him back to his house and basically, like, moves in with them, because she doesn't really have anywhere else to go. And Raddley's like, okay, she's just this, like, sweet kid who is really silly. So she moves in with Raddley and his wife, Beth Ann. I know, Dianne and Beth Ann. Why do we have so many names that are so similar? Will? So she moves in. Raddley also lives with his mother, who he's taking care of. She's older and kind of sick. And he's a sweet son and takes care of her. He has his wife, Beth Ann, who is a homemaker, classic 1950s housewife, and she is full of sass. She's a Southern belle. I love her. She is mom. So then a lot of the RP is just, like, very fluffy. from there on out. We kind of forget about the gangsters a little bit. The problem with this RP is I have no idea what the gangsters were trying to do, so there's this big plot hole of like, why did they need Raddley? What are they gonna do with Diane's dad? So there's a big problem with that. I don't know what I was thinking. I had some plan, like 7 years ago, but I don't remember what it was. So a lot of fluffy stuff happens. It's a lot of just Dianne talking with Bethanne and Raddley. She is always trying to get Raddley to like talk to her, because she's like, I want to know what his voice sounds like, and maybe I can help him get over it. But like, she is not equipped to do that. And at first he's really annoyed, but after a while, it's just kind of like a running joke between them, where she's always trying to like sneakily trying to get him to talk, because sometimes he'll mumble in his sleep. But yeah. Anyways, so they're cute friends. Dianne has like a boyfriend that she's really hung up on named Boyd. He was part of the Hooper gang. That's what they're called. They're called the Hooper gang. No idea why. I think the leader's name was Hooper. Right, so she's hung up on this guy named Boyd. She was really into him. He didn't have any time for her, but she didn't notice. Again, not very good relationships with boys, thanks to her mean old dad. But, so he's run off. She's trying to look for him. But in the meantime, she meets this sweet intern boy who works at Raddley's office. And he's always like, he's just a sweetie. He's always bringing them sandwiches. He's got like a little bike that he rides around on. And him and Dianne start to have a thing for each other, but she's very like, no, I can't date him because I'm in love with Boyd and I just have to find him. And Bethanne is like, honey, you like the intern. Give him a smooch. There's also this mean rich guy who works with Raddley. He's basically like Logan from Gilmore Girls. He's like, if Logan wasn't like a good guy at heart who worked hard and was smart. So basically he works at this company because his dad owns it. He's not a very good mathemagician, and he's mean to Raddley, kind of. A little bit. At some point, Dianne introduces, I think it's Boyd's sister or something. I forget how she knows them, but she introduces them to Ruth, who is a lesbian from Canada. And so she's just this, like, out lesbian in the 1950s, and, like, everyone's, like, all shocked, but she's just like, I don't care. So her and her waifu are really cute. Yeah, it was a lot of just fluff and cuteness. Dianne found out about Raddley and his relationship to his dad. So his dad is dead during the happenstances of the RP, but like Bethanne tells Dianne about like Raddley's dad was always like really harsh on him, and he's like, I want you to like buck up and be tough, and he was always mad at him that he couldn't talk. But eventually Raddley, like, you know, he proved he was a really good mathematician, he got a really good job, he got into a really good school, and his dad like finally showed that he was proud of him, and he was actually secretly proud the whole time. He was just like a dad from the 1950s, so he was all like tough love. So Raddley was always like really torn up about that. He's a good boy, takes care of his mom. So then the RP kicked off again with actual plot stuff. And so Raddley is framed for theft at his work. Like a whole bunch of money from the vault gets stolen, and someone frames Raddley. It turns out it's like his boss. It's like all the way from the top. His boss caused the theft. I think he's working with the Hooper gang or something, and he's pinning it on Raddley because Raddley is like, you know, a misfit. He can't really like defend himself very well. So he runs away. Meanwhile, the Hooper gang shows up. They kidnap the snobby rich boy. So Raddley's like, oh man, I gotta go save this guy. So he goes to help. He gets kidnapped. So Dianne goes to save them. She runs into Boyd, and she's like, oh, Boyd, let's run away together. And he's like, sure, babe. But then he sells her out to the Hooper gang, because he was working with them the whole time. Shocking plot twist. I know. I don't know what's going on. So he sells her out. Her heart's broken. So she runs off and goes to Bethanne, and she's like, listen, I might have messed up. So Bethanne is a kick-ass lady, and she runs in and she saves everyone. I think. Again, this RP doesn't really have an ending. If it does, I don't remember it. It was probably one we dropped when things got really plotty. So Bethanne saves the day. She is tough lady. And I do remember Dianne, she does discover that her dad is like a jerk, and he finds out that he was really unfaithful. So she finds out that the lady who runs the Hooper gang is actually Diane's half-sister, because the dad was like unfaithful. And so Dianne is like, oh my gosh, what a scumbag. She realizes Boyd is a scumbag. And I don't think there was an ending, but in my heart, she ended up with the intern, who was really sweet. And they go live a nice, peaceful life with Raddley and Beth Ann. And all the mean people get arrested. That's what happens in my heart. So there. Yeah, that's all I got. Thank you for listening to me ramble about RPs. How do you guys RP? Also, RP more. It's really fun. And you get some really cool stories out of it. You do have to tailor them because they're very windy and weird, and they don't really fit into a proper plot arc, but you can get some really cool collaborative ideas out of them. I should tell you guys, we're doing our live stream on Sunday this week, because Bones and I are going to be at the zoo. Be prepared for that, okay? Thank you. Like, comment, subscribe. I used to have a rhythm, and now it's gone. I'm tired. Goodbye.